Ford Health has worked with over 50,000 executives, and what's become clear is that the highest performers don't separate their health from their performance. They treat them as the same thing. Hi, I'm Gillian Whiting, and today I'm joined by Dr Toby Ford. Toby, you've worked with thousands and thousands of executives over the years. When you reflect back on all of that experience, what is it that you think that separates those who are performing at the highest level to everybody else?
I think the key thing is the attitude towards linking. When I'm well, I perform well. And so for most of our clients that are successful at this stuff, they've made that step, and it's a game of incremental improvements oftentimes.
What then are the biggest risks or challenges that you see in executives health-wise?
I think many executives these days are well informed. Most of us can get access to information. So health literacy is the knowledge about well-being, but it's overpopulated. There's a lot of stuff there. So sense making for us has been a success in actually getting through to people, cutting through their busy schedules and saying, look, here's a couple of things that you might like to think about. It was possibly the basis of why we established Complete Wellbeing as a program, where we identified that there were 6 sectors of wellbeing that were really important. And they were medical, the evidence around wellness and wellbeing or prevention of illness; resilience, my ability to adapt and heal myself after particular adversity; sleep, a big one. And then, of course, connections, which are oftentimes undercooked, underestimated and underthought of connections. And then, of course, we'll have lifestyle and then work itself. What's your purpose? What's your passion?
So looking at all those different sectors, it's important for executives to really focus on those individually?
I think so. But one of the things that happened to us was we had a database which we'd collected over probably 15 years or more. We discovered that we could actually numerise this idea of well-being. So the numerisation of well-being is not a new thing. Lots of people have set out to create indexes. But for us, it was the ability to give you a score in those 6 areas and then give you a total score. Now, most high performers, you give us a number and we'll try and knock it off, because once you get a score, you can go, right, where do I go? What do I do? Which bit's going to be more important than which? And I'll do it and I'll be back next year. You watch, I'll be back.
So someone stepping into a leadership role, is there one piece of advice that you would give them?
I think I could summarise a couple of things. If you happen to be in a stable monogamous relationship for more than 10 minutes, perhaps the big thing is to actually date your spouse. That would be really important, because that to me is the essence of some of the connectivity that we all need in our somewhat isolated, competitively isolated lives as leaders. The other one that's probably an anchor to most of this is exercise. For many executives, we spend a lot of time in our brains, a lot of left brain stuff. You know, you're analysing, you're trying to work out the details of how to make something happen. So this left brain oversight leads to a bit of a bazooka brain. You want to shoot targets and be effective every day. Then you come home at night time and you've got to put this bazooka brain in the cupboard, and then you've got to go and be nice to the family. It's very difficult for people to switch off sometimes. So we'll come back to that, the art form of being able to switch off. And then the last bit possibly, I think, is physicality. For a long time, I thought physicality was just one of those really groovy things that you could have if you wanted to, and being buff at the gym was a nice idea. But I now realise that for most of the high-functioning people, it's actually the benefit of being in some sort of sport physicality workout that is an ingredient to balance up this notion of my mental fatigue and demand and my physical exhaustion. I mentioned this idea of connectivity. I think that competitive isolation is a common trait that we see in executives.
What do you mean by that?
The higher you go up the food chain, the less likely there are to be people that you can talk to about what's going on. The oxygen is thin and thieves are many. And so this idea of competitiveness is very common, I think, in many workplaces. The isolation that comes with it is quite interesting.
What's the solution to that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. A lovely lady called Akona, who wrote in the Harvard Business Review some years ago about the complete leader versus the incomplete leader. The complete person as we arise up our food chain is a person who is technically sound, knows everything about everything and judges their competency on that. My knowledge is complete, therefore I feel competent. Sometimes when the executives go into the executive role, what they quickly discover is that a lot of their technical soundness on which they were actually promoted is important, but more importantly is all of the other architecture of the landscape around their role, where they're being asked to make commentary about things that they don't know much about. So, of course, what happens is they feel suddenly that their knowledge is incomplete, therefore they feel incompetent. So one of the things that we've been trying to work on for those people is to actually allow them permission to understand that their knowledge may not be complete, but they're not an island. If they're not an island, then maybe they could open themselves up to teaming, which is why oftentimes we see some of the best executives are very good at those personable skills to team. And then all they can start to work on then is, I don't know everything, but I just need to know who knows what. And that level of stress and anxiety, performance anxiety in particular, will start to kind of reduce itself.
Looking at those who are suffering from stress and burnout and comparing to the high performers, what do you think separates them?
What would happen is we get a lot of people who come who are worker bees, and they're hard yakka worker bees, and they have what I would call an obsessive passion for their work. Now, that obsessionality for work is a key indicator of potential to be promoted and also to be successful. However, what it tends to do is it tends to lock them into a world where there's not much else that they can actually bounce off to gain perspective. The best executives I think we see are those that have harmonious passion. Harmonious passion is when, like for example, if you focused only on your business world and you forgot about your family and you said, oh, well, they don't really matter, it's just about the money, then you probably wake up one morning, there wouldn't be many of them in your house.
No.
However, if you participated as a hands-on parent, you may learn about all the things that are interesting when you're actually with your children as a form of harmonious passion in your life.
We hear about resilience all of the time. What is it and how do we build it over time?
Now, if we've come from that sort of stoic, dogged crowd, it's likely that we could just be stoic and dogged about everything. But if we came from a different crowd and we were resilient and adaptable and we thought to ourselves, here's a bit of adversity, here's a bit of discomfort that I should embrace. What shall I do? For that group, I think what they're really good at is they can build islands of competency in a sea of self-doubt. And this is really important for many of us because sometimes it's our self-doubt which is the limiting factor which causes us to either go dogged or actually to forget to look after ourselves.
Looking at those who do suffer stress, burnout, what do you think separates them from the high performers?
So within our database group, we've been following a group of education leaders for the last 5 years. And one of the things we learnt from this particular group is that at the moment, education is under fire, and many people are feeling that the poor old school leader and the school teaching staff are under duress. And don't get me wrong, they definitely are under duress. They're the interface with society and education. It's a big, tough area. But we discovered to our surprise that in that group of N equals 1,000, there's about 30% of them that are actually doing really well. There's about 40% of them that are doing reasonably well but could do better. We also discover that there's about 30% who are really struggling. So what we like to advocate for is that there's a group there that might be doing well. So when you dig in on that group, what you start to see is that they have a high index, which is our scoring system. They're pretty consistent with it over time. They take seriously the ability to tweak, say, sleep or tweak connections. They take it seriously and they sort of try and build in new tools. But one space that fascinated me in particular was this observation of what we would call obsessive passion versus harmonious passion.
I love that term, harmonious passion. It's fabulous.
In the obsessive passion people, we found that they were getting a lot of burnout. But there's this other group which are really exciting, I think, and they're the harmoniously passionate group. And so in that group, what we discovered was that some of them have diversified their portfolio of interests. And we think there's probably about 10 portfolio areas. The first one, of course, might be work for you and me. The second one could be your marriage or your long-term personal relationship if you're blessed. The third one could be to be a parent or to be someone's child. The fourth one would be exercise and physicality. The fifth one could be hobbies, creativity, very important for right brain. Sixth one is personal development, then professional development, philanthropy, volunteerism, and the last diamond in the group is legacy. What is it that I plan to leave my offspring that will be profoundly important to their future success? So if you look at those portfolios, the person with the mixed portfolio has a sense of harmonious passion. What do we think comes from that? Perspective. When I'm out exercising, I don't worry about the share price of my company because I'm exercising. When I'm doing my hobbies, I'm not particularly engrossed about the possibility of something going wrong somewhere else because I'm having a good time self-regulating. So if you can see from this, those who've got harmonious passion do a lot better in the long run.
I always think of it as a pie chart, visualise it and see how much work is taking up, family, and you can feel if something is taking up too much space, it's time to rethink and look at harmonious passion.
Yeah. Another thing that's interesting is that we don't worry too much about how many hours you work. If you came in and you said, look, I'm doing 100 hours of work, I'd say you're stupid. But it is not uncommon for us to find 55-hour people in leadership roles. It is not uncommon, to say the least. Some of that is actually conducted at work, some of that's conducted at home, some of that's conducted in airports. It doesn't matter. But that box is what we'd call the work box. What we're interested in is what we call the envelope of loyalty to work. So that's a box that exists outside that, which is for some of us is quite substantial. It's what we call the worry box or the wonder box. The worry box is, we're all going to be foreclosed and it's just a matter of time before we get shot at dawn. And lots of people have those paranoid feelings late at night when they're lying in bed trying to switch off. But there's also the kind of the idea of the world domination. How can I put my business on every street corner and get very excited at night time, which prevents us from falling asleep. So I think the envelope of loyalty box is a really important thing for people to focus on because it's siphoning off that energy, which is oftentimes wasted, never valued by anybody else, and repurposing that into those other portfolio areas. And that leads to a person who can be easily able to mature their concentration onto other things, which gives them then harmonious passion, which then, of course, gives them this better balance.
The topic of wellbeing is critical. It's a huge topic. We could talk for days about this. But it seems that it is something that needs to be addressed, and it does also directly correlate to high performance, doesn't it?
I think so. I think it has a great relevance. And one of the things I hope we can do is help people to make sense of it because there's so much. It would be nice to decipher it in a clear fashion that you could respond to it and improve your own well-being.
Toby Ford, thanks for the chat.
Thank you.